Hello, how's everybody? I hope everything's okay and I wish everybody the best. This is sort of like a casual talk, maybe oral history of modern day Iran. And also, it goes back to some experiences, personal experiences of my father, who was born basically a few years after Reza Shah, and he had personally paraded in front of him because he was a soldier back then, and he also faced the Russians. He was one of the troops that was sent by Reza Shah to face the advancing Russians who were in Qazvin, and it was sort of like a stalemate because my dad used to say that they could see the Russians from the other side and the Russians could see them, vice versa. Anyway, I don't know if there was some skirmishes there, but at any case, when the order came to put down the arms, the Iranian troops gave up, and then we know what happened. Everybody knows what happened, that Russia and the British occupied Iran during World War II. The Russians occupied Iran in the north and the northern states or provinces, and then the British occupied the southern states, and perhaps there were some neutral places in between, almost like the old Qajar dynasty. Now, I'll go back to Ahmad Shah. Ahmad Shah was the last king of Qajar dynasty, and he was a young man, youngest, young, you could say, very young, and he wasn't very powerful. But from what I heard from my dad, and my dad was a great historian, had a tremendous knowledge in Iranian history and the world history in general. He used to say that if had Ahmad Shah had a chance to rule, he would have been a very good king. He would have been a very fair and constitutional monarch. But by then, I think Reza Shah, by the help of the British, had got to really a powerful position, and it was already too late. Now, going back to Ahmad Shah and Reza Shah, well, while Reza Shah was one of the troops, Russian troops, or I guess in Russian Kafkaz, I think. Anyway, in one of their troops, he basically was very powerful, very strong, very tall, and very fierce looking, and so he had the makes of a really strong leader or dictator. At least the British at the time thought that that was the best option for Reza Shah to basically uh, have a way means of kicking out the Russians or lessening the influence of the Russians. So they helped Reza Shah, and one of the days that he walked into a tent, and then the British invited him, and they discussed with him the plan they had for capturing Tehran, and for Reza Shah's troop to move down to Tehran to claim Tehran as a sort of like a victorious, I guess, as a captured city. So Reza Shah eventually would just rise in positions, and finally he became the king. And I think he ruled till 1940, and till the British kicked him out. Now, it's very interesting that Reza Shah in the beginning was with the British, and like I said, the British did help him. But as he ruled, although he was a very severe dictator, I mean, he was a nobody could look into his eyes. He had really, if he looked at you and stared at you, many people, I mean, were scared to death. He had such strong, kind of scary eyes and stare. At any case, when Reza Shah got to power, he started basically industrializing Iran, because Iran didn't have the modern machinery. So he brought some from Germany, and anyway, he did a lot for Iran. He made the roads safe, because all the roads back then, they were dirt roads, and they had highway robbers basically, and these highway robbers made it so unsafe that people couldn't travel. Now, mind you, back then they didn't have buses like they have now. My dad said that they used to travel in trucks, in like dirt haulers, in those primitive trucks. which was more fit for cattle than humans. But when the shooting would start, let's say on the way from a major city to another city, on those bad roads back then, the highway robbers would shoot to stop the truck. And if you didn't stop, you would either get killed or hopefully you would pass it, and then some of your passengers would get wounded or killed. But if you stop, they would rob you and maybe even kill you. So the Iranian roads were not safe. So needless to say that we know Reza Shah did a lot for Iran. He did establish universities in Tehran, Tabriz, and at any case, the first signs of modern Iran was established by Reza Shah. But towards the end, as Germans got stronger and Hitler came to power, and because of the connection of the so-called the Aryan race between Germany and Iran, although the Germans are, I'm not sure if they're from Aryan race, because the Aryans came to Iran as far back as maybe say 3 to 4 thousand years ago from the steppes of Russia. They moved to Iran and they mingled and mixed with the present day at that time, I guess, of people of Iran, and they basically eventually they took over. They took over the reign, and we know about this, about Cyrus the Great and Darius the Great. In any case, don't want to get too far from Reza Shah's history. Reza Shah was truly a dictator. He was much worse than the Shah as far as limiting the freedom. And he forced the women to take off their cover because traditionally they had the cover. And he wanted to emulate Turkish, Ataturk. Ataturk did the same thing for Turkey and made it a modern country. And Reza Shah respected Ataturk. Ataturk went to Iran for a visit, and Reza Shah reciprocated that trip. And so the two were friendly, on friendly terms, those two countries. When I was in Turkey, there is a street named after Reza Shah near the old post office in Istanbul, and also in Taksim Meydan. I was told one of the people, one of the soldiers or important people behind Ataturk is Reza Shah. So they were really friendly towards one another. Anyway, Reza Shah tried to copy what Ataturk had done for Turkey, but by 1940 or so, when the World War II had already started, the British thought that he's siding with the Germans, and they couldn't have afforded losing Iran, because had Germans got to Iran first, there wouldn't be any victory bridge, because the Allies called Iran victory bridge because they supplied the Russians with weapons. If you study World War II, you know that there was very difficult to send supplies to Russia, and the Germans were advancing, but they got stopped in Stalingrad, and then when they got stopped, the reason for it was, well, many reasons. Winter, and then Russia got more and more weapons using the Iranian railroad cars, and the British, the Americans, they started sending weapons from Persian Gulf, from the ships onto the railroad tracks, and extended it all the way to Soviet Union. So they would go sort of like behind, or behind the German lines, not behind, pardon, in front of German lines, quite a few miles from the German lines, and then they would provide their